Welcome to the InfoMullet YouTube channel. If you enjoy this content, please like or share. And if you'd like to support the InfoMullet by becoming a mulleteer, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate your support. This gets into what I'm calling the lost year that's sitting ahead for schools and universities. So about a month ago, I did two models, one of which was on universities and the other of which is on schools, showing that the push to return to normalcy, which was evident in the summer, that we're going to reopen schools, we're going to go back to normal, we're going to return school to normal, has led to the same dynamic we saw with the push to return to normalcy for businesses. And that means a hasty reopening that was ill-advised with these conditions that I just modeled talking about are resulting in infections and quarantines and disruptions, which are at the very least removing the normalcy you were seeking to have. And in worst case, some of these places are reversing and shutting down and closing the schools. And this has happened now in a bunch of high schools that started opening late, that had early openings, they were early August. Georgia got on the news, of course, because Georgia did. There was a school that had a packed hallway. I mean, that last model was 8 feet. This was not even 30 inches between people. It's packed with students. No one's wearing a mask. Hardly anyone's wearing a mask. There was a lot of hubbub about, well, the students should be sharing these images on media. They were going to get in trouble. Boom, a week later, that school district has closed because of the outbreak of cases. University of Chapel Hill. Now Chapel Hill is not a small university. This is 20,000 students, and they opened early. They were allowing students to move in. This is when they're doing it. And it didn't take long. That model I showed you a month ago was over the course of a semester. This is in 2 weeks. They had a positivity rate of their testing. It went from 2.8% to 13.6%. Remember, that positivity rate when you're testing is an indicator of how widespread the outbreak is. And as of this morning, and this is the press announcement, they had not over 1,000 students in isolation. They've tested 1,000 students, excuse me. Close to 200 were in isolation and 400 were in quarantine. So of a student population of 20,000, within the first week, 500, or about 2.5% of your population, is already now in isolation or quarantine. And they're saying, fortunately, most of our students who have tested positive have demonstrated mild symptoms. Well, that's symptoms. That's going to be reasonable. We know that the breakdown is, 80% are going to be mild, some percent, maybe even with that young age, 90% are going to be mild. But what we don't know is the long-term effects. And when they say, yeah, most of our students are mild, even if it's 1%, you just had 5 students who went in a hospital, maybe 10 students, maybe 20 students hospitalized. And so what you're seeing universities now do is University of Chapel Hill reversed. They're going online. They said, well, we tried this. It lasted about a week, and now all undergraduate classes are going online. And you're seeing this effect play out across the nation, both in schools, and I use schools to kind of talk about high school, primary, secondary, high school, middle school, elementary, and universities, colleges, things like that. And I think it's going to continue to play out because remember, we're just the first weekend. This is an accumulative risk. As you continue this exposure over time, as we're in an environment of outbreak, a school that opens fine and doesn't have a problem this week is still going to be worried about it next week and the week after. And I think what's going to happen, people are pointing out that in that model, if you have 6 hours of classes in a day and that school is not well prepared, you're virtually guaranteed to get, if there's an infection in the community, you're going to get a high risk of infection. It's just not feasible. And when I say the lost year, this isn't just the classroom size. A bunch of conferences, college sports conferences, have basically shut down their seasons. And this is both out of concern for the athletes, the concern that they can't reliably get people in the stadiums to watch the games, they can't safely hold them. They're going to be, this lost year is going to play out in a lot of ways. The first way is obviously students are going to challenge and learn, because a lot of universities, when they should have been preparing for online learning, or some sort of separated cohort approach where the people who needed essential services, those were the only ones coming in person, and the rest was online learning. They didn't put that investment in time in. They bought into this normalcy, and they kind of, we're going to go forward and give it a try. They gave it a try, and now abruptly they're having to shift back to online learning. Well, go back and think about your workplace. When your workplace had to go online in March in a week or two, they're going to lose 3 to 4 weeks just getting everything online and dealing with this. I mean, I have a feeling that this semester is pretty much a lost semester because we've done this rush to reopen. We're going to have this, and it's because there's no nationwide response. Every state, college, and school is going to make these choices individually. A school may get all the way into October and then have to shut down or then have to modify. It's not going to all be in the first month here, but I'm still suspecting that before this first semester is open, you're going to have so much chaos and turbulence that you're going to basically have a lost semester. And this isn't just lost in terms of school outcomes and education and learning and risk. There's a lot of pressure on revenue from parents who are like, why am I paying this much tuition for all online? There's not going to be any sports revenue. I suspect that by this time next year, we may be talking about a collapse of the college bubble, where there's, at least for universities and colleges, they've been relying for years. We've talked in the past about foreign students paying high levels of tuition. They've been relying on sports revenues to a large degree. They have very high costs, which are very hard to justify in the best of times. Now they can't. And then all these additional expenses they're putting in place to be safe, only to find out you can't have a picnic safely in the middle of the forest fire. I think it's going to be a real financial shock to the system as this plays out over the next year. Now, maybe things will get better and we'll have a better outcome, but I don't think so, because seasonally, we just got through the best time of the year, right? If you think about what's the best time of the year to have a pandemic, it's not, it's behind us, right? We're now going into the worst time of the year to have a pandemic, especially when you talk about schools and universities, because what happens beginning in October, November, December is the flu season begins. Right now, I've showed it before that the CDC chart, the earliest the flu season starts usually in October, then November. Most often it starts December, January. So if the schools are closed down by that point, I think there's a lot less risk. But we're going to be overlaying this wave 1.5, possibly wave 2, on top of a flu season, which historically we've been getting better, but 2018, which is the last date I have, was one of the worst years on recent records. So there's like these risks. If we have a bad flu season on top of a pandemic, you're talking about that curve scenario where you've failed to flatten the curve, going out all over the place. So the good times are behind us. Hope you enjoyed the good times as far as the pandemic comes. The hard times are coming up ahead. Get the flu vaccine, right? We've talked about masks, and now we're back into that annual fight of, do I get flu vaccinated? Get your flu vaccine. Do everything you can this year to keep the flu as minimal as possible, because that's going to hit right on top of the pandemic, and it's going to be a bad situation overall. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to follow the InfoMullet, visit us on Facebook or Twitter. And if you'd like notifications when we post new video content, click on the red subscribe button below the video. If you've ever wanted to become a mulleteer and support the InfoMullet, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate the support.